Okay, you guys could see my screen, right? All right, yesterday we started looking at Photoshop. Well, for Photoshop 1 people, I was going over some of the most commonly used tools you might need. And then for Photoshop 2, I want you to practice with the pen tool with lesson 8. We didn't complete lesson 8 yet, so we'll do that today. Um, and then lesson 1 we're done with for Photoshop 1. So I'm going to delete that folder. And let's look at lesson 2 today and look at some other common tools. Um, okay, Photoshop 1. So today we're going to download lesson 2 for Photoshop 1. Photoshop 2, we're still working on lesson 8. So we'll stick to that one. Hey, why is that taking so long? There's lesson 2 for Photoshop 1. And in case you lost lesson 8 or something, Photoshop 2, let me give you that one too. So that's for Photoshop 2. So download that, extract it so you can follow along. Okay, so this lesson only has an end file, doesn't have a start.psd, but it does have a start.jpg and a bike.jpg. Okay, so I'll start with lesson 2 today for Photoshop 1, and then I'll try to move quickly back to lesson 8 for Photoshop 2, okay? So just open up Photoshop. Okay, did everyone open up Photoshop? Um, okay. So lesson 2, we're gonna start by opening start.jpg. But if you just double click it, you're just gonna open it in your default photo viewer. So that's not how we open it. Instead, you're gonna right click on it, and we can say open with, Okay, look for open with and then use Adobe Photoshop 2021. Okay, and that should open it up in Photoshop. You can also, if you have Photoshop open on one side and you've got this open here, you could also drag this into Photoshop. Open it that way. And you can also say File, Open. And let me actually just move this to my desktop. So you can say File, Open, go to your desktop if that's where the folder is. You can open it this way too. Okay, so lots of ways to open a file. All right, so this photo, you're gonna notice it's rotated a little bit, and it looks very red and yellow. So the color needs to be fixed on this. We could look at the end file to actually see what it's gonna end up looking like. So this is what it's gonna end up looking like, but right now it looks like this. So we're gonna fix it to look like that. So some of the changes, of course, it's not as red anymore. It's been rotated. We got rid of some of the cracks on the wall. Changed the color of the hat. And brightened up some of the yellow here. So I'll show you how to do all that right now. Okay. So first thing is we want to rotate this image so it's straight, and at the same time crop it so we don't have any of this extra white around the edges. So there's a couple ways to do it. Um, you're gonna have to crop and rotate the image. So the way you would do it if you didn't have a special tool to rotate and crop at the same time, you would have to say you'd have to grab that layer first, make sure it's selected. There it is, the background. And then you'd have to rotate it, but as you can see, it's grayed out. It doesn't let me transform right now to rotate it. That's because the layer is locked. So I gotta double click on it. Then I can do an edit, make sure the layer is selected. Then you can do edit, transform, rotate, or a free transform. And you could try to rotate it until it looks straight. And if you wanna be sure if it's perfectly straight, you could pull out a ruler. And the way you pull out rulers is first you gotta make sure the rulers are showing. You can see I've got my rulers up here and on the left. To show the rulers, you need to go to View and then just put a check next to Rulers. View Rulers. When you have rulers, you can click and drag from the ruler, and you could drag this blue guideline. And I can use one to, see if the image is straight. So I'd probably put it where the ground is, around there, and then edit and transform and rotate the image until it looks like it's straight. Right, so this blue guideline right now is aligned with the ground. So that's one way to straighten it. And after you straighten it, then you would have to maybe grab the rectangular marquee tool and select the part of the image that you want to keep. Remember, you can do a select transform selection if you want to adjust your selection. Okay, you hit enter or hit the check mark when you're happy with the selection, and then you can say image crop to cut out the extra white part and to rotate it at the same time. Well, not at the same time, two different steps, but That's one way to do it. Um, but let me go file revert and go back to normal. Actually, let me give you guys a couple minutes to try what I just did. So try that out and let me know if you have questions. Um, so while you're doing it, um, I'll just walk you through the steps again without actually doing it. So you're gonna want to show your rulers again, so you could drag a guide out from the rulers. So to show the rulers, you need to go to View and then make sure Rulers is checked. Then you want to click and drag from the top ruler a horizontal guideline, which will be that light blue color. Bring it close to the ground and then select your background layer. Double click on it to unlock it. And then you can do a edit rotate or edit a free transform and rotate that image until the ground lines up with the guideline. Then you hit enter to accept your transformation. And then you can use the rectangular marquee tool to select the part of the image that you need. And then hit image crop to cut out the image and to crop the image so you don't see the white parts from the edges. Okay. And a much simpler way, well, I wouldn't say simpler, but maybe more proper way to do that is to use the crop tool. So if you select the crop tool, you can straighten the image with the straighten tool, which will be at the top in the control panel. You're gonna click on that little level tool right there next to the word straighten. Then what you're supposed to do is click the beginning of a line that's supposed to be straight completely, like the ground line here, like the base of that wall. Click that and drag to the end of it. And once you do that, it'll straighten your image, and then you can hit the check mark to accept that. And then you can crop the image by dragging from the sides like this until just the part that you need is there. And actually, there's some settings we need to um, mess with on this, because at the moment when I crop it, you can see the area that I'm cropping is this specific rectangular shape. Um, that means the proportions are being constrained right now because it's set to original ratio here. Um, so what you can do is say clear on the ratio. That way it'll let you make it whatever size you want. And once you're happy with the crop, you just hit the check mark and it's cropped. I left a little bit of white on the edge, so here, let me bring it in a tiny bit more. If you zoom in, you'll have a little bit better control. So I'm going to zoom in so I could see that better and move in smaller increments. And there we go. Now it's straightened. Um, and I'll give you guys like 3 minutes to try that on your own. Alrighty, so once it's cropped, we want to change the color. Okay, so it's too red. So what we need to do is decrease the warmness of this image and increase the coolness, I guess. There's different ways of doing this. We could do it with an image adjustment, and we can choose. There's a lot here we can use. We could use hue saturation, and with the hue saturation, um, you could shift the color, but no, that's gonna completely change the color. So you don't want to use that. You could use image adjustments, photo filter, and instead of a warming filter, use a cooling filter. Try the different cooling filters till you like the result. And let me put these side by side again, so the end file and the start file, so we could compare it to see how cool we need to make this. So I'm gonna click Window, Arrange, 2 up vertical, and let me make them the same size. View, fit on screen, or the shortcut for that, Control 0. And then we can go Image Adjustments. Where is it? Photo filter, cooling, and well, let's say let's just put it on blue, and then let's see if we increase the density. So if you increase the density, then you could kind of get it closer to that color. It's not exact. There's some other things that are going on here. There's also a different filter applied to sharpen everything, so that's why this one looks blurry and this one looks a little bit sharper. So I'm just worried about the color at the moment. So I just want to get the color close to what it's supposed to be. But I'm not getting close enough results with the photo filter, so I might want to try something else. Let's see, image adjustments. Let's see what levels gives us. If we go to levels adjustments lets you again brighten and darken the image, but that's because right now it's set to channel red, green, and blue. You can control specific color channels, like the red. I can pick that, and if I slide this, I can decrease the redness of the image. That does a pretty nice job getting it closer to the color I want. If I bring it in from this side, it's going to be more red, so I'm going to bring in the left side because it's too red. You could also slide the middle one around a little bit. But yeah, I'm getting some nice results. I'm happy with that. I could leave it at that, but let's explore some other options. We could do curves, also lets us choose color channels. So I could also choose red from curves and try to decrease from here. And I don't know, it's almost exactly the same as levels, except you get um, this sort of graph to manipulate with the points on it. So that's another option. What else? Color balance. You could shift from the red side to the blue side a little for the cyan instead of red. We could also increase the from the yellow to the blue, but I don't know, that's getting it too purple, I think. Maybe if I mess with this one, but it's possible with this too, but I think the other tools I used were a little better. This has options for like doing the shadows, midtones, highlights. Um, what else do we have? So we already looked at photo filter. We could choose like a blue filter, or we could even pick a custom color and then increase the density of it, but that doesn't work too good. So I'm not gonna use that one. Um, anyway, so I think the best ones for this were levels and curves. Levels was a little bit easier. We just switch to the red channel and drag that slider on the left side to the right a little bit, and maybe mess with the middle one too a little. And I think that's good. And then you can click OK. Um, some images, some JPEGs, um, are supposed to open with camera raw if they're raw JPEGs. A raw JPEG, or actually it wouldn't say, it might say JPEG, but it might say start.raw if it's a raw image. Raw image is an image that's straight from the camera without any um, automatic compression added to the image. So raw images usually are going to be bigger in the file size, but they contain a lot more color information and a lot more data inside the image file. So they let you make finer adjustments to the image. But a JPEG usually has been compressed a little bit, so you lost some of the original data. So, but you get it down to a smaller, more manageable file size. Um, this bike image, I think, is. Let me see if I say open with Photoshop. You can see this one, instead of opening directly with Photoshop, it opened with Camera Raw. Um, so Camera Raw is another Adobe piece of Adobe software. And if you have an image like this one with that extra uh, detail about the image, it'll automatically open with this Camera Raw. And this will let you adjust the color temperature of the image and the tint, and it gives you all kinds of little controls here. Um, but there's a later lesson where we'll use Camera Raw, so I'm just gonna click cancel here. But yeah, I thought I remembered this thing opening with Camera Raw, but I guess not. I remember adjusting the colors in this with Camera Raw, but might be mistaken. So just gonna use levels for that with the red channel. Okay, and then I'll go back to window, arrange, and I'm gonna say consolidate all to tabs. So we just have one here, and these are inside their own tabs instead of side by side. So that's the end file. That's the start file. They're not exactly the same. The rotation is a little bit different. The color is a little bit different, but we're gonna try to get it as close as we can to what this one looks like. Honestly, this end file kind of looks a little too noisy, and this color is a little too bright. But we're gonna look at the tools that you can use to do these kinds of effects. Okay. Um, let's do the hat next. Okay, that's kind of interesting. So how do you get this red hat to turn green or whatever color you want? You're gonna use remember I think I showed you this yesterday. There's a color replacement tool. You can use that, but again, there's like a million ways to do this. So color replacement tool is just one way to do it. I'm gonna pick the color replacement tool. Right now I've got a green color selected already, and all you gotta do is start painting inside the hat. And all of a sudden now it's green, except I went outside the lines a little. So this one, you might want to decrease the size of the brush. So left bracket, again next to the letter P, right bracket, left bracket to increase and decrease the size of that. So I'll make it a bit smaller. There's also a tolerance on it, and there's also a color mode or a mode on it. Right now it's set to color. Change that to hue. I think hue works better for this, yes. So I'm changing the setting for the color replacement tool to hue at the top instead of color. Color was getting it a little too bright. It's not good. So change that to hue and just paint over the hat. So that's one way to do it. That's the way the book wants you to do it for this lesson. I went outside the lines, did a pretty bad job with that. I'll show you what I think is a better way to do this. Because once you do this with the color replacement tool, there's no going back. Can't really erase the parts that like I went outside the line and stuff. The tool is supposed to stay inside the lines, but sometimes it doesn't if you go a little too far with your brush stroke. You could try decreasing the tolerance, like it was 30, I decreased it to 10 now. If you decrease the tolerance, then it'll stay more within the lines, but then it might not get all the edges that you want. So you can see kind of the edges are still pink. Um, might have to go over it a few times to get it to change color, but then it starts getting messy looking. So what's a better way to do this? I would say if you select the hat first and on a separate layer, you add the color that you want. Okay, when you do things on separate layers, that just makes it easier to modify it later and undo the changes and hide the changes and everything. So, um, so the better way to change the color of the hat would be to first select the hat, and you can use any of the selection tools that we looked at, see which one um, is best for this. I'll try, let's try the lasso tool first, because that's the most basic tool for selecting stuff. So it would be pretty difficult unless you have like a drawing tablet, like those Wacom tablets. Um, if you're just using your mouse, it's very hard to draw a precise shape. But the nice thing about the lasso tool and most of the selection tools is you can always remove from the selection and add to the selection. Like let's say I want to zoom all the way in so I could really see the pixels here. I can hold the shift button and then maybe add a little bit more to my selection, like get more of those pink colors. So I'm just holding shift and adding to my selection right now. Maybe I want to get all these as well. So just hold shift, grab everything. And sometimes it's hard to decide which of those pixels you want to include because they start blending from that pink color to the background color, and you're not really sure how much of this you need to grab. But I would grab um, more instead of less, like that. And then if you wanted to remove from the selection, you could hold the Alt button instead of the Shift button. Okay, but right now it doesn't look like I went out. Like for example here, if I go outside too much, like I selected all this stuff, I can hold the Alt button and then remove that from my selection. Okay. So let's say I'm happy with that selection and I've got the hat selected now. What you can do is create a new layer. So you want to open up your layers panel and then click the new button. And now we've got a new layer called layer 1. And on this layer, I'll just grab my paintbrush. Actually, now there's different ways of doing this. I could paint the color that I want. Okay, and don't follow along just yet. Where's my brush? Oh, I've got a weird grass brush selected. Let me switch back to my normal brushes here. General brushes. Just grab something there. There's my brush. So I could fill this with whatever color that I need, like green, for example, and then go to that layer and switch the blending mode, right? Because you could blend different layers together in different ways. So I could use the hue, and I can decrease the opacity of the hue if I want to decrease the strength of that color. But another way to do it is instead of creating a new layer, new normal layer anyway, and painting on it, you could create an adjustment layer. You could create, you could click that little circle icon in the middle on the bottom of the layers panel and choose hue saturation. Okay, and then when you have a selection and you create a hue saturation adjustment layer, it automatically masks everything out except for your selection. So if I do a hue adjustment, you can see just the hat changes, nothing else. So I can pretty much put whatever color I shift the hue to. And let's say I want it to be a blue color. Okay, I can decrease the saturation if the color is too strong. I can decrease the lightness, but probably not a good idea to mess with the lightness. I'll leave that on 0. But I'll decrease the saturation a little bit, and you can also, because an adjustment layer is just another type of layer, you can also decrease the opacity of that if you don't want the effect of that to be so strong. So I would say that's a better way than to use the color replacement tool, right? Because if I ever want to disable that effect or make some changes to it, I could just hide that layer and see the original color of the hat. And I can always go back and change it to any other color that I want. Alright, so for that one, give you a little bit more time. I'll give you guys 10 minutes to try out some of the stuff that I just showed you. 10 minutes is kind of long, so in that 10 minutes, I'm gonna switch back to Photoshop 2, okay? So Photoshop 1 people, um, just try doing what I just did. Again, try the different methods, color replacement tool, or creating a new layer and painting it whatever color you want. But again, the best way is to use the hue saturation adjustment layer with the hat selected. And I'll tell you more about these layer masks later, but uh, for now, just do what I did just a second ago. But there's a lot more to know about these. Okay, switching to Photoshop 2 now. Photoshop 2, we're working on lesson 8. So I'm going to open the start file again and the end file. So this is the end result that we want to get. And we want to cut out this spaceship by using the pen tool. Okay. So I don't know. Yesterday I wanted you to practice with this. I don't know if you did, but again, I'll go quickly over how to use this pen tool. Right. The amateur way of using the pen tool is to make a bunch of points in the shape that you wanna create. So let's say I grab a picture of a bird from Unsplash. And just type bird here and search for a picture. There's one. Actually, let's take this one. Copy and paste. Okay, that's kind of a big picture for this this artboard. So let me increase the size of my artboard. To increase the size of the artboard, you can do an image canvas size. So right now it's 438 by 240, but this image that I just copied is probably, I think it's the medium size, 1920 by 1271. I'll just say 1920 by 1300 to make it bigger than it needs to be. Okay, so there's the image. I guess it was smaller. It's probably the small size, 640 by 423. Doesn't matter. So I got the image and I want to cut out this bird. You could grab the pen tool, and again, the amateur way would be to just make a bunch of points, just clicking along the edges of the bird. Um, might be faster to do it this way, but in the end, the result might not look great because you're making all these sharp points and straight lines. So let me just quickly trace the bird. Try to do this fast so I could get to the point. Okay, so I made my path using the pen tool. So I just created this path. A path does not show up in layers, it shows up under paths. You can see here I've got this work path. Once you have a work path, you can right click on the work path and you can say make selection. Okay, and then that becomes a selection instead of a path. Okay. And then once you have a selection, I don't know why my Photoshop is doing this lately, but it looks like it's selecting the inverse. I've got like a big selection out here and then another here. It looks like it's selected the opposite of what I want. So I'll just inverse that. I'll say select inverse. So now that I have the bird selected, I'm gonna, I could do a edit, copy, edit, paste. Now I have a bird on a new layer. But if I hide everything and put this on a, um, let's put this on a white background. You can see it's very rough edges. It's not very good looking edges. There's tools in Photoshop to fix that. It won't work with something that you copy pasted though. Okay, so if you're gonna try to cut out an image from its background, instead of copy pasting, let me undo everything. Control Z, Control Z. Go back to where I have it selected. So instead of copy pasting, you probably already know this by now. You can click on in your layers panel, click the button next to FX, the one that's just a box with a white circle in it. That will create a clipping mask using that selection that you had. Okay, so the reason why clipping mask is better is because you can, first of all, you can paint areas that you don't want to see, paint it black to hide it, or you could paint white to bring it back. More importantly, you can right click on that, and you can say select and mask, and then you can try to refine your selection. You could smooth it, increase the smoothness, you can feather it, increase the contrast. You can also use the refine edge tool. So the refine edge brush tool will try to do a better job selecting like the feathers and the hairs. You're supposed to just go over the edges, and then Photoshop will try to do a nicer job with the detail areas like the hairs. So it does a pretty good job. Every time they update Photoshop, this tool seems to improve. Also depends on the image. Some images, it's harder for Photoshop to figure out where the edges are. But I don't know. So it's a decent job selecting it. Maybe not so decent. Let me create a new layer. Paint that against a white background. That looks fine. Looks pretty okay against a black one too. It's just a little too sharp on the edges. But I can always go back to select and mask, and then increase the contrast a little bit. To sharpen it a tiny bit. But let's delete that layer mask. Go back to the original image. And what is this in the background? We don't need that background anymore. I'm gonna delete that background layer. And select this and crop the image. When you control click on a thumbnail of a layer, it'll select everything on that layer. So since all of this is empty, that part's not selected, only the rectangle with the image in it is, because I control clicked on this. I can do an image crop and get rid of the rest of it. Anyway, so if you do a better selection with the pen tool, you'll get better results. So that was what happens if I quickly make a bunch of points to make the selection. But when you learn how to use the pen tool, then you'll figure out that you don't need to make so many points. Like for this beak, for example, I just need a point right here, another one here, and I might want to, instead of just clicking, I might want to click and drag a little bit to create the curve of the beak. Okay. And then I got a sharp part here, right? I don't want it to curve too much out on that area, so you can hold the Alt button and then break this handle, point it in the direction you think the curve should go, and then click your next point. And if it's not good enough, you can always adjust it. So if you're really good with the pen tool, you won't even need to do a refine edge. Okay, but you're probably gonna need to zoom in really close to really do a nice job with that. Right, so let's go here, grab these little feathery parts. So as great as the refine edge tool is, it's still a computer trying to figure out where the edges are. So if you're good with the pen tool, you can decide where all the edges are and do a nicer job selecting stuff. So this would take a little bit longer than the other way, but I'm making the curves exactly where they need to be. I'm determining where I see the edges, and I'm making fewer points. The fewer your points, the easier it will be to modify those points, and also you're keeping your file size smaller. This is actually a lot more important in Adobe Illustrator. Because Adobe Illustrator, you'll do a lot of drawing with this tool. So if you master this tool in Photoshop, you'll be better with Adobe Illustrator. So a bird is probably not the best image to choose for using the pen tool. Something like a whale or a dolphin or maybe like a butterfly would be a better choice because they have like more curves and stuff and not as much hair. So they would be easier to select. So I'm kind of I chose something that's a little too detailed for this. That's why it's kind of taking long, but um, it's also very um, relaxing, I guess, to try to follow along the edges. Might take time, but at least it's enjoyable. I think I'm almost done. Yep. I just need to get this part. See, even I can't tell where the bird is and where the background is at this point. So imagine the computer trying to figure that out. But it's not really a big part though. So and we are done. Cool. So now if I go to paths again to select this path and say make selection. By the way, when you say make selection, you get an option to feather your selection, but there's really no point. So always leave that on 0 because you can always feather later with the layer mask. So I'm just gonna say feather radius at 0 and say OK. And again, it's selecting the opposite. That's some weird setting on my computer. I'm gonna do select inverse to select what I want and create the layer mask. Okay, now let's create a white background in the back of this. And most of it looks fine except these parts because of the white background. But that's what the refine edge tool is for. If we go right click, select and mask, I could go over these parts with the refine brush tool. What is it called exactly? Refine edge brush tool. Could go over some of these edges to fix it. And since I did a better job selecting it, the refine edge tool works a little bit better here. Um, I probably don't even need to use this tool here. If I want to undo the changes that I just did, I can hold the Alt button and then paint over the parts that maybe I did too much refining. So Alt will undo those changes. I think there's another option inside the refine brush tool. I'm gonna undo all the changes real quick. Make this brush a lot bigger and hold the Alt button and undo any refining I did. There's I think it's under output settings. Yeah, if you open up output settings, there's decontaminate colors. So contaminated colors are like the white behind the feathers because that's part of the background and it sort of blends with the feathers. If you choose decontaminate, um, I don't know, it doesn't seem to be showing me anything here. Let me increase all the way to 100%. And let's just say okay. Let's see if that does anything. Well, that didn't do much. I guess that's only if there's actual color. Like white doesn't count, so it didn't do anything. Anyway, so for this lesson though, we're not gonna be doing any refine edge. The point of this is just to learn how to use this pen tool properly. So I don't know if you got practice yesterday, but you're supposed to start from the A. So click. There's no small a, so we just click on there once. And then for the B, there's a big B and a small b. So you need to click on the big one and drag to the small one. That's supposed to, help you figure out where to drag this to. But it should be easier if you didn't use these guides. These guides are just to like sort of babysit you, tell you where to drag it to. And when you have a corner, you can't just click the next letter because then you get a curve going this way. So you gotta hold the Alt button and click that point. and that breaks the extra handle. And then you can click the C, drag to the little c, D to D, E to E. There's no small f, so just click the F. Then G to the little g, then H to the little h. Got another corner, so Alt click that point. Then I to the little I. Again, we have a corner that we need to create, so Alt click that point. Click the J, drag to the little j. Again, corner, so Alt click K to K. L to L. And then this one, I don't know why it doesn't work. This one's wrong. Supposed to click M to M, but that makes the curve too much. So I would just click the M, and I would even decrease. I'd hold the Alt button and pull this L down a little bit because it's too much. And then click the N to the little n, O, P, Q to Q, R, S, and then back to the A, and then drag to final. So that's how you're supposed to follow these guides. So again, the M part is messed up. I don't know why. So try that with the guides, and then try hiding the template layer, because the guides, those letters are on that layer that says template. So hide that layer and try it without the guides. I'm going to delete the path, and then try this again with no guides to help me. So I'll create. So this part in the guides, you have a point here, you have one here, and you have one here. But really, you just need one here with the long handle, and then another one here. And you can adjust these handles by holding the Alt button to make it perfect. But it just takes 2 points for that. Then we hold the Alt button to break that one. Click here. Click here. Drag to here. Or maybe click and drag here to have a smoother transition here. But yeah, this one, eventually when you get the hang of it, it's really easy to adjust everything to exactly where you need it to be. So I'm always, well, a lot of times I'm holding the Alt button. That Alt button lets me manipulate these handles separately. Okay, so this one, it's a long curve here, so I'll probably need to stretch this handle out pretty far. And then to the next point that I need. And we can always adjust this if it wasn't enough. Hold the Alt button and drag that out. Adjust this one. And make another curve here. Decrease this one a little bit. And back to here. So a lot fewer points. I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 points. So if this was letters, I would only have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M. I'd only go up to M, while these go all the way up to S. Okay, so give you guys some time to do that. Actually, it's break time, so yeah, when we come back from break, I'll switch back to Photoshop 1. Okay, so break.